So what does the Bible say about sex? How should we view things like pornography? These are the questions that we'll be dealing with on this episode of the Dudefax podcast. And in all seriousness, if we have any young listeners or parents, this may be an episode that you choose to listen to together, or perhaps you skip until the time is right for you to have these discussions and then listen. For everyone else, buckle up because this will be a timely and good discussion today here on the podcast.
Welcome to the Dudefax podcast. We're so glad you're here. We're four guys that are united by a love for coffee, Jesus, and corny jokes. In the past, we all served in ministry together. In the present, we create podcasts to help you get through your week. And in the future, we aspire to be the granddad that teaches his grandkids to pull his finger. So if you love Java, Jesus, and dad jokes, you're going to fit right in. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of Joe, and enjoy this week's episode of the Dudefax podcast.
Well, let's talk about sex. Welcome to the Dudefax podcast. We've got Ryan and Josh and myself, Jeff, here. We are happy that you've joined us. We will be talking about the S word today, sex. And now before you get any ideas, yes, there will be a lot of sass and frass in this. But before you get any ideas, like those ideas, know that this will not be a perverse discussion today, or one on which we will make light of the subject. We recognize that this is a very appropriate subject, one that hits home with us all, and I think is important for us Christians to dig into Scripture and really look to see what God has to say. So today's discussion will be a good one. We're going to take a look at Scripture. We're also going to challenge one another in our walks to make wise choices and honorable choices in regards to this area. So you'll want to stick around for that discussion. Now, at the beginning of this podcast, we do start off light because it's our water cooler talk. And we just like catching up with one another. And we want you to jump right in like you're just sitting down to a fellowship meal before we get into the Bible study. So that's going to be this part. So if you're wanting that meat, then, hey, you can fast forward or go to the next part. But if you want to warm up a bit, we're going to spend a little bit of time warming up and just catching up because, hey, there was some great football over this past weekend. And if you're listening to this really like the weekend before last, because we're recording this kind of early, but some big football games as the NFL got started and we had college football, but perhaps no game as big as the University of Tennessee versus your Austin Peay Governors, baby.
Oh, yeah. Let's go, Peay.
That's right. Did you guys watch the game?
I did. But I was rooting against the Peay.
But
Oh,
I kept up with the Gamecast on my ESPN app. So
how about the Peay? They gave the
fight.
Vols all they could handle for a while there.
Vols fans were nervous until the end of the game. Like till halfway through the fourth quarter, there was a this better not. And it was
the moment that Austin Peay had the lead. I think every Tennessee fan was just like,
I mean, it was like
Because it's a 9-3-1, baby.
I mean, it was 6-3, right? That was a lead.
Yeah.
No, or was after they got their touchdown? I don't know. I forget
They were
what all
up
happened.
6-3.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was it.
As a matter of fact, I took a picture of that momentous occasion, forever etched in time.
Yeah. So we were sitting and watching it. So we're UT fans, but I always like a good underdog, and Bridget's the same way. So as we're watching football, especially college football on Saturday, we generally always root for the underdog, no matter who it is, unless it's Alabama, which they're never the underdog. So that always works. But she got so into Austin Peay.
Yeah.
Doing well. And I kept getting frustrated at the stuff Tennessee was doing wrong. She's like, let Austin Peay have their moment. Let them. I said, they've had their moment the whole first half. Like it's time for Tennessee to get it together. But it was cool to see the 9-3-1 represent and Austin Peay show out.
Very
That's
the
right.
931 represent very openly on the sides of helmets and front of hats.
Yeah, I
Chuck.
thought Austin Peay had the cooler uniform.
They did have a cool uniform, even though Tennessee had their smoky grays on.
Yeah.
I love the helmet that Austin Peay had, and so as we were watching it, I took a picture of the coach and sent it to the guys. It's this picture right here.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've got a glare, but
Oh, yeah.
So his hat says 931 on it.
Because it's a 931, baby.
That's right. And my conspiracy brain started rolling, and I thought, hey, I bet they're familiar with the CLV rap, and
Of course they
took
are.
our idea and made those hats based off of what we had.
I think so. Of course, you had me going there for a while, Josh. I thought it can't be, but it must be.
Mhm.
Somebody stole our idea until I realized our hats actually said CLV.
CLV,
not 931.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I caught that later. But still.
Yeah. We did say it's a 931 at the beginning of our song.
I think we
this
coined that.
clip,
Because it's a 931, baby.
that is from the beginning of the CLV video. So I definitely think we put the 931 on the map, and now people are putting on hats and T-shirts.
I think at the
And
very
it's-
least they could just play that song, kind of as an opener to home games.
Yeah.
You know how hyped they'd be?
Yeah. I'm
Everyone
down
would
with
be so excited.
CLV.
Yeah, you know me.
Might get me to go
You know
to a
what,
game.
We mentioned Austin Peay in the video.
Mm-hmm. But it only took 17 years. So I think Austin Peay was playing the long game. They're like, we're going to wait
Yeah.
a decade and a half before we start doing this 931 thing, because we don't want Jay Philly, Jay Tizzle, and Factoid to think that we're ripping off their talent, making money off their, because you know how much you have to pay to get one of those hats? You have to make at least a $500 donation
It's ridiculous.
to the P. I really wanted one until I heard that. I was like, yeah.
How much money do they need? Like they got all my tuition money.
Yeah.
They should
You've already
be fine.
given
Okay.
you've given enough to the P.
Yeah.
You've sacrificed
I should get a
to
free
the P.
hat.
Let's see. It says the 931 keeping things interesting through one half in the 865. So I guess that's Knoxville. Every gift of 500 or more will receive an exclusive 931 hat.
Ooh.
And
So
I just don't want it that bad.
I say we make our own 931 hats.
Yeah, but it's a cool hat, man. It's got
It is.
the Austin P logo, and yeah, it's nice.
So we want to take this time, and I think we may have mentioned it before, but there is a CLV2 coming very soon. And there will be a lot of references to the 931.
Captain.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be good. So if you're from the 931, tell us, what would you like to see on the CLV video? Maybe you want to be in the CLV2 video. So the song's sort of already been written, but we haven't done the video yet. So there's plenty that we could add and put into the video. So if you want to be a part of it, if you think, hey, this person or this place should be a part of it, let us know. And if you're not from the CLV, if you're not even from the United States of America, let me just tell you, the 931, it's an area code for Clarksville, Tennessee. So when we say CLV, that's Clarksville. 931, it's the area code for Clarksville. We're proud of the P. And so way to represent Austin P. Let's go P.
Fifth largest university in the state of Tennessee.
That's right.
At least it was when I was going there.
And we were peeing on, I'm assuming, the largest university.
yeah.
At least for a half. That's right.
Yeah,
So.
and for y'all that don't know, the CLV rap, I mean, it actually got radio airtime. It was highlighted on a mid-tier local country radio station with a very low strength output of their frequency, but still, it was on there. They played the whole song. So
Yep. They recognized our talent. I mean, maybe Austin Peay, you said they're playing the long game. Maybe they're the opposite of a hipster. They like things way after they're cool.
Yeah,
So
they wait until
radio
it's completely-
station.
That was how I lived middle school.
Run its course.
Described my entire life.
That's right.
But bringing back great memories to making those videos. And it was funny today. I was reminded of a memory on my phone. 14 years ago today, Ryan furiously chased some ducks and made one trip and fall. So just in case you're wondering, that's what we were doing 14 years ago. Besides making the CLV rap, Ryan was sprinting after ducks and he made one trip and fall. Do you remember that, Ryan?
I think so. There's multiple occasions where I've run at ducks and or geese. If it's
How
the
many
one I'm
times have
thinking
you
of,
fallen
I'm pretty
doing
sure
that?
it was at Dunbar Cave. And there was a bunch of ducks. I think there was ducks and geese because the geese were like bullying up on the ducks, and I was running at them.
The geese are insane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Canada geese, if you ever go to the marina, which is here in Clarksville, down by the river. So I usually go on Mondays and Fridays to run. And the Canada geese are like everywhere, or as I've heard people call them recently, Canadian cobra chickens, which seems more appropriate because these things are like
Yeah, it's an
are
accurate description.
crazy. But every time I'm running, you see just like hordes of them moving in, like they're ready to storm the beaches of Normandy or something, or they're like the Jets and the Sharks West Side Story.
Yeah, well, that's
Like,
what
they're
it was
gonna
like.
come
It was
after you.
a few weeks ago. When I go to work in Nashville, I park at Nissan Stadium because it's cheaper than parking in like a garage downtown, and they have a shuttle that takes people in and out of downtown. And so I parked one day a few weeks ago, and there was just a ton of geese like filling the parking lot of Nissan Stadium, and they were like roving around. It was like I was in the Warriors, but with geese. It was crazy.
Did you guys see? I think it might have been about the time that I moved back here last summer, or maybe right before. I had gone down to the marina and I noticed that there weren't many geese. And I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was, and they said that, I don't know if it was Montgomery County or Clarksville one, they actually had a geese hunt at the marina where for like a 24-hour period, they let people go to the marina. They closed it down. You could go and you could just kill geese.
Just people out there
Like,
with
you could take 'em
shotguns,
out.
just taking them
Yeah,
out.
I mean that's like a redneck paradise.
Man.
It is
There's out there
a very
because-
Tennessee thing.
Yes, it is.
because they had so many, they had to get rid of them.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I guess it worked for a while, but now they're back and better than ever. I mean, it's like, you know, when the Terminator kept coming back as like an evolved like robot, they're like evolved cobra chickens.
They heard about
now.
what happened. They were like, we gotta show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are back and they
Our
are
turf.
ticked off, baby.
It's like Rambo, that second one. What's it called? I know the first movie is First Blood, but it's like when he comes back and he's just out to destroy everything. That's what these geese. I mean, they were in training. They were like Rocky. They're running up steps. You know, they're punching slabs of meat in a butchery or. I don't know.
That's what life is like here in the CLV. We have killer geese. So
They have to survive somehow. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a rough place.
So the very last River Fest took place this weekend. Did you guys go?
I don't
I
think
didn't know it
I've
was happening.
ever been to Riverfest.
I
went
think
to
the
Rivers and
most.
Spires, but not
Mhm.
Riverfest.
Do they still do Rivers and Spires?
No,
No,
they
they
canned
quit
that
a
as
few
well.
years ago.
They got rid of that. I think the most famous person at Riverfest was Haven Madison, the
Yeah.
American Idol
Oh yeah, the
superstar.
local girl that
Mhm.
was on American Idol. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another claim to fame in Clarksville right now. We have someone that lives here in Clarksville. My son Silas, his friend, is actually neighbors with this girl, so he's always talking
Oh.
about his neighbor who's on American Idol. But Yeah, Clarksville's going like gaga over her, and she came in like what, 5th place or something. Or she was top 5 or something like that.
I don't watch American Idol. I just know it was a big deal.
Yeah, I haven't watched American Idol
big
since
deal.
season 1.
I think she made it pretty far. There's several people at our church that know her, and I think when I overheard some conversation on a Sunday morning, and they were just like, "I can't believe she didn't get through. She's the best on," and they were talking about it. It's the last few rounds, and they thought she would make. I have to be honest though. I was walking through Miss Lucille's the store, and everybody had,
it's a great store.
Great store. If you're not familiar with Clarksville or Miss Lucille's, it's like a indoor craft antique store, like booths and everything.
You just made it sound totally unmasculine.
I know.
Yes.
They sell things made from wood.
That's right.
So, but anyways, you go. There's all these booths and different things that people sell and make. And there was one there that there were all these shirts in it, and they all said Haven Madison on them. Like they're just selling all these shirts, different colors. And I was with Bridget. I'm like, what brand is that? And like, is it that famous that they would have a whole booth? I've never heard of that. She's like, I don't know who it is. And that's because we've been out of the CLV for 6 or 7 years. We didn't know, and it was shortly after we came back, and then we found out about Haven. I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So she's the daughter of the lead singer of Building 429, who is also like a Clarksville claim to fame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he used to have all the
at one time
the Christian stage decked out at Rivers and Spires.
They at one time they had an autographed picture of Building 429 in the Chick-fil-A. I don't know if they still have that.
I doubt it.
Pretty soon they're going to have this guy.
Hey, it's got you covered.
Yeah, we got Kevin Kennedy.
Yeah. 1.5 million TikTok followers now.
Yeah.
It's got a lot.
And I remember when we moved here for the second time in like 2006, shortly after that, they put these signs up at the city limits. When you drive into a town, sometimes they'll put like high school football champions 2008 or whatever. And I remember they put up these signs for this girl that had won the Miss Teen America pageant or something in like 2007. And apparently she was somehow connected with the church we went to and where we served. And it was a big deal. And I was like, hey, that's cool. That's our claim to fame. Girl won the Miss USA teen pageant. And it's like, there's nothing else we can put out there, I guess. All the high school teams are terrible. But you have that. And then Wilma Rudolph.
Yeah.
That's another claim to fame.
Wilma.
What more do you need?
Yeah. That's really all we need.
And now you've got the Dudefax podcast. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what else?
Lots of quality stuff coming out of it.
Clarksville might as well just stop.
Yeah.
They need to pull a George Costanza and leave while they're ahead.
Leave on a high note.
Leave on a high note.
Absolutely. All right. Now, this is the part of the podcast that is strictly for Olivia, hopefully. Okay, I hope that played this time.
Do you give any context to that?
Nope. Just guess.
So some apologies. We have had some issues with our editor, whoever that guy is, and we've missed out on our soundboard stuff the last 2 weeks. So we think hopefully you heard what Jeff just played.
Yeah.
And or we're gonna have to fire
if not, Ryan, can you recreate it for us?
Yeah, sure. Give me a second.
Get in character.
Right, go, girl.
This might be even better than the
It
sound
might
clip.
be. Let's mark this so we know where to grab it from.
All right.
Prepare yourself. Jeff, you picked the wrong time to take a drink.
That was great.
Yes.
I
Yes.
hope everyone enjoys that.
So if you didn't hear the sloth sound, Ryan just recreated it for you. Exactly the same, really.
Ryan,
Ryan's might be a little bit better.
Is your wife home,
Yeah, she's downstairs.
Ryan?
So what is going on?
Do you ever have to explain anything after we record? You walk
Yeah,
downstairs and
it wouldn't be the first time.
That's actually the sound that Ryan made as he was chasing those ducks, I believe.
It puts the fear of God into them.
It's also the sound he makes. Well, we'll talk about that in the next part. All right.
Oh,
All right. Let's
Oh,
talk
man.
about. Yes. Let's talk about. Hey, Josh has got a new conspiracy, right?
yeah, and well, it's an update to
Ooh,
a conspiracy.
update.
Now, it's not an update to one that we talked about last time. I didn't have time to grab my tinfoil hat, but I did have a plastic bag, so I'll just wear that. My
That's
twice
close enough.
daily bag. Does that work? So here's the thing.
Wait, do we need the music?
Yeah, we need some music. You got some music? Oh, here we go. This is perfect music. I don't want it to be too loud. All right, can you guys hear? Okay, or is the music really loud? Because
no,
it's
it's good.
it's really loud on
Might
my
be a
end.
little loud.
I like it. Okay. So, anyways, you guys saw about a month ago this lady that was on a flight heading to Dallas. Her name's Tiffany Gomez, and she gets up during the flight and she starts freaking out. She kind of runs up to the front of the plane. Have y'all seen this? And
Yep.
she's yelling about something in the back. Everybody thought she was drunk or high on something. But she says that she sees a reptilian or a shapeshifter or something, and it was sitting next to her in the plane. And so she gets up and she runs out all crazy. Well, right after that video comes out, she goes missing. Like they can't find her. She's off the grid. No one knows where she is, that kind of thing. So, of course, there's conspiracy that goes around with that of, well, the government had her taken out or whatever. So she shows back up just a week or so ago. A video appears. It's on her website, which she has like a fashion website or she sells something. She's made a video apparently, and it's her apologizing for her actions on the plane, saying she shouldn't have done it. She didn't see anything. It was all a hoax, whatever it was. And so, of course, web sleuths now come to the video, and they're watching it, and they're thinking something's not right here. So two things are done. One, there's apparently an AI detection test you can do, or some sort of generator you can run a video through to see if it's AI. And it has this grading scale, and anything 0.6 or less, they'll say it's the actual person in the video. It's not AI. Well, her video, this one, scored a 1.2 on the AI test. So basically that means they say it's an AI generated figure on there, that it's not really her. And then other people started to dig in to see where really did the video come from. So they start researching the DNS server kind of to figure out where it originated. And when they get into it, and I don't understand all this, but apparently it does go through Dallas, or at some point looks like it comes from where she lives. But as you keep tracing it back, apparently its point of origin is, anybody want to take a guess what city?
CLV.
Yes, Washington D.C. And and I saw something that this one guy, he showed it on the screen. He said it actually points, and it showed in the address somehow, the Department of Defense.
Oh,
So they're saying the video originated as an AI generated video from the Department of Defense, and it's not really her, that she's still unaccounted for and missing, and the government's trying to cover up the reptilian on the plane. Crazy.
yeah.
So let's get back and what do you guys think? You know, we talk about our rating system. 1 flat Earth means, no, I don't think so. Up to 5 flat Earths, which you're like, okay, this is legit. I seriously think something's going on here. What would y'all think?
I'm gonna give it a 4 flat earths.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mainly because I normally would say, like, so my inclination would be to say that the government would be smarter than to leave that, much of a breadcrumb trail to lead it back to the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
But also, my experience with our government tells me that's exactly what they would do. So that seems pretty plausible.
Yes, you're right on that, Ryan. I'll go back to our government may seem smart, but there are a lot of people within the government that aren't the brightest. Just let me tell you, as somebody who works in the government. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody put together a video and left that breadcrumb trail as well. I'll give it a 3. But here's what I think. If it is somebody within the DOD, it was not an authorized DOD thing. It's just somebody in the DOD who is bored and not doing their job like they were supposed to be doing and decided to play games with this Tiffany Gomez lady or whatever her name is. Because I've seen other interviews with her, and I mean, to me, she seems like one of those people, who is crying out for attention. And I think there's enough legitimacy to know that she's out there and puts herself out there. So I think it would be hard to really do a video like this with it being a fake. But I definitely wouldn't be surprised if the government is, or somebody within the government is doing this just as sort of a joke or an act of boredom. So maybe it was done by somebody in the DOD, but if it's really like a dark conspiracy,
maybe she got her hands on like those glasses that Roddy Piper has, and they live. She's actually able to see through the camouflage and see the reptilians.
I thought maybe you were talking about the glasses that Nicolas Cage finds on National Treasure.
Benjamin Franklin's glasses.
Yeah.
That would be. She got a hold of them.
She could see the map on the Declaration of Independence.
Yep.
Hey, remember when you're looping something on the soundboard to turn the loop off when you hit another?
I was wondering.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of dun 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 moments. So yeah, I'm probably in that 3.5 flat earths, and just because, again, I wouldn't put it past the government, but at the same time, I tend to think that we live in a world where there's an enemy really trying to distract, and who knows? In fact, I learned something really interesting. We're not going to get into this, but throughout biblical narrative, Old Testament and New Testament, the image of a serpent or a reptile, Leviathan, things like that, is always used to denote something chaotic and something that's trying to wage war against the order God is leading us to. It's trying to move things back to chaos. So it could be that a reptilian, as an agent of the devil, showed up on that plane and is now distracting all of us.
No.
You never know.
Maybe.
You never know.
I think they're just losing control.
Or she was high. I mean, she had too many drinks before she got on that flight.
Between her and then the signal being broken on the mind control of Mitch McConnell twice during press conferences, I think that the reptilians are losing their grip.
I think so.
Hey, I've got some breaking news, but this will not be breaking news if you're listening to this a week from today.
Which you are.
Which you are. But
at least
Aaron Rodgers, in his first game with the Jets, was injured on the first drive and taken off the field.
Oh, man.
Just to let you know, I just saw a blurb come up on my phone.
I'm gonna be honest, that's a better outcome than I thought was going to happen for his first game with the Jets.
At least he doesn't have to. At least he's not the one that's going to be to blame. After.
Yeah. So the Jets are back with Zach Wilson. So congratulations, Jets fans. You had all off season to be joyful.
Oh man, it stinks to be a Jets fan. Has to.
Is that a conspiracy?
Well, apparently the NFL's rigged. That's another conspiracy that's out there. So it's all scripted.
Did you guys see the commercial, the scripted commercial?
Oh yeah, I love that commercial.
That the NFL did. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I'll have to look.
So
it
the NFL pokes fun at themselves
Mm-hmm.
with a scripted commercial. So it's pretty funny. You have to go back and watch it.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. So we're going to be talking again on the S word today, sex, and our next part. So we hope you've had fun with us. And if you're one of those who you have younger listeners and you're thinking, yeah, we wanted to listen to this first part to see where they're going, well, it's going to be taken up a notch. So if this is rated PG or maybe a PG like 11, we're going to bump it up a
Which
few
is
notches.
the maturity level that you need to be to understand the first part is no more than 11.
So now we're going to get up to like a 17. So just to warn you, not that we're going to purposely try to be belligerent or gratuitous, but we are going to have some frank discussion on the topic of sex, pornography, and all those things, and obviously talk about God's plan and all that, and have some healthy discussion. So that's coming up next on the second half of the Dudefax podcast. Thanks for listening.
All right, everybody, welcome to part 2 of episode 30. This is our 30th podcast, guys. Episode 30 of the Dudefax podcast. Yeah, we are a third of the way through, even more than a third of the way through our lifespan.
Our show is middle-aged.
It is middle-aged. Yeah, it's starting to get
is 30
advanced.
middle-aged now? I didn't
Yeah,
think
Ryan,
I was
sorry. You're
middle-aged yet.
Well, let me ask you this question.
Depends on how long you live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Are your eyebrows growing, are certain eyebrow hairs growing longer than others and looking a little kinky?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're middle-aged.
Yeah, Brenda
Welcome.
picks them out every so often. She notices them and jabs them out of my face.
When you end up shaving your ears and nose as often as you shave your face, you're that middle-aged.
Okay.
So that's not our discussion, but so welcome to part 2. If you listen to part 1, we're glad that you stuck with us. This topic that we're going to talk about today is, I think, a very it's an extremely serious topic. I think it's something that really is a little misunderstood, but it's definitely taboo. Like, you don't hear a lot of conversation on sex and pornography from a Christian perspective. There's some books, there's some resources. Every now and then you might have a pastor that addresses it, but more often than not, there's a lot of confusion out there about what's right, what's biblical, what does the Bible say, how do we respond to it? And if you're like me and probably Jeff and Ryan, I'm assuming the way that if you grew up in the church, even the way that you learned about things like sex and pornography was in a way that left a lot of things uncovered, and maybe even sex was communicated as something that was bad and to stay away from, which I think fuels some of the desire to try to figure it out on our own, especially as a middle school or high school age boy, when that's something that you're really interested in. And if it's something you shouldn't be thinking about, you think about it. So that's going to be our topic. We gave a warning in the first part. I'll go ahead and give it here now. If you are a parent of a younger child, maybe under like 11 to 14 years old, somewhere in that range, you may want to consider listening on your own before having them listen, or just be with them as they listen to this. We're not going to get vulgar or really descriptive on anything, but it is content that we think everyone needs to hear. But parental discretion is advised. I do want to share as we get into this, that the average age of first exposure to pornography is 14 years old. And 95% of those who are 18 years old and younger have viewed pornography. So if you're thinking that's not my kid, they don't need to listen to this, I don't need to pay attention to it, whatever, don't fool yourself. It is something that almost 100% of kids and teens have been exposed to. 70% of Christian men or church going men view at least once a month. And the women, it's close to 40%. So this is something that affects everybody. There's somewhere close to like 50% of pastors are struggling. It's 70% of, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. I'm saying that wrong. 50% of pastors have viewed, probably within the last month or so. 1 in 5 youth pastors view regularly. 1 in 7 pastors view regularly. So it's an issue, and that's just the people being honest. So this is something that we need to talk about. We need to figure out, and so we want to be as honest as we can in this and talk about it with discernment, but also clarity, because it's a major thing that's wreaking havoc, not just in the church or in culture, but in specifically men's lives, because they are into something they don't know how to get out of, and it destroys the man at the root of who he is. So before we get into some of the more details of this topic, we do want to just set a baseline of what is sex according to Scripture. Like, what does the Bible have to say about sex? Because if we don't understand that, the rest of the conversation doesn't really matter. So we wanted to go around and share our own experiences as we were growing up, of what kind of perspective we took on of what sex is, what it's about, how it should be viewed from either our home life or the churches we were a part of. So we want to share some of our perspective there. Either of you guys want to start us off with that and share a little bit about how you were taught that topic?
Yeah, I can start us off. I was surprised actually, Josh, to hear that statistic that the average age of viewing pornography is 14. I would have actually guessed younger. And the reason I say that is due to the fact that I had friends when I was in elementary school talking about pornography and that had magazines. And this was before the internet age. So this is when it's a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. I remember being about 4th or 5th grade in my backyard. The wind was blowing and some pages of a magazine just happened to blow up against the fence in my backyard. And some friends of mine were out playing and one of my friends picked it up and it was naked pictures. And, I remember my mom, seeing this happen and of course grab it. And at that time, I think she may have slightly addressed it and said, hey, you're not supposed to look at those. But it's a topic that I think historically in the church and probably outside the church too, parents have shied away from really being, having honest, truthful conversations with their children about it. It's taboo. It's difficult. It's awkward. And the church has treated it the same way. The church has always treated it as, yes, sex is a gift from God between a husband and wife. So the church has always been very clear on that. But outside of that, it's been more historically, as far as the teaching goes and how I grew up, is stay away from it, stay away from it, stay away from it. Here are the things that you can do to stay away from it, stay away from it, stay away from it. And then until you get married, then you can enjoy it. And some of that's good in that, like Joseph, when he ran away from Potiphar's wife, sometimes you just got to flee from that temptation, just get the heck out of there and take off sprinting, because that's what Joseph did. But at the same time, that doesn't change the heart. And that's where I think, one, not talking about it enough in the home and not talking about enough it enough in church, I think has not just failed our generation, but lots of generations, in that there hasn't been that discussion on here is why this is an issue. Here's why your heart is longing. In the book of James, we're not blaming the devil for temptation. James says, you're lured and enticed by your own desires. So these are desires that are in our hearts. These are desires that are in our minds. Why are they there? There's a lot more to that. And we haven't addressed that, I believe, enough in the church. I think we recognize it, but we haven't addressed it enough. And we sure as heck haven't addressed that enough outside the church and every other walk of life.
What about you, Ron?
Yeah, I think that my personal experience with it was, and one thing that I think that we do, not only in the church, but just in society, we don't start really talking about this with kids young enough. I feel like we wait until they're, already like 14, 15 years old, and they've probably already been exposed to it for a good few years by that point. And we kind of like put it off as this thing like, oh, we don't want to talk with our kids. We don't think they're ready for it yet. But in actuality, kids are likely, when they're not talking about it with adults, or from somebody at the church who's teaching them adequately about it, I think that you're going to find that they have experienced it between from friends, or older siblings, or friends' older siblings type thing. That it comes in, and you experience your first experience with pornography can happen a lot younger than people think it happens with their kids. Mm-hmm. And when you don't have that firm basis and foundation, it really can go a long way towards just from the get-go, just twisting a child's view on sexuality and what it means. And then on top of that, from my personal experience, a lot of the stuff that I had early on in preteen years, and then early high school, I did have some good teaching from people in the church and certain things I was a part of, but I also experienced teaching that almost taught sex as if it's something to be ashamed of, and it's something to shy away from, to the point to where, even when you are in a biblical, marriage, and you're in that relationship where God intends sex to be, and to be something beautiful, there's still this, in the back of your mind, there's that attitude of, oh, this is something to, we don't talk about this, and we teach that it's something to be hidden. And I think that generally has, in my experience, been something that kind of pushes it to this almost where, even when it's in God's ordained place, it seems like something that's taboo, and you're either doing something wrong, or just, regardless, you have a twisted relationship with the idea of sex. And, and I feel like that's a pretty common thing. I've seen that with a lot of people over the years, especially as I've come into early adulthood. I've seen people write about it. I've talked with people about it. It's a pretty common thing that people have experienced in their teenage years. And I think that's where we fall short as the church, is in how we approach this.
Yeah, and Ryan, you said something that I meant to share as well, because you talked about how we don't talk about it young enough, with kids at a young enough age. And I think you're right, because even if the stats show that, young men, women haven't seen pornography, say, until age 14, they're having conversations about it. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, talking about a definition of pornography. In some ways, they've seen things that have the same effect as pornography, had conversations that had that same effect at an early age. I mean, I firmly believe, and I don't know what the stats show, maybe should have looked it up, but I firmly believe that a lot of kids are having their first conversations about sex with their peers, and not a trusted adult, mentor, parent, whoever. I know that was my case is I heard about the birds and the bees from my friends in elementary school. That's how I learned about it. And I think that this is commonplace.
I do want to correct the stat I gave. 11 is the average age of exposure. By 14, 95% of children have seen porn. So I did have my number. So you're right. Like it is a yacht longer, a lot younger than what I had said earlier. My story is very similar, but I wasn't exposed to porn until I was 18. And so or at least as far as what we view or think of about pornography, images of nude people. But you said something really important. Like there are other things that I would see, or even begin to look for, certain J.C. Penney catalog come in the mail or whatever, like things in that, or just images on TV, like especially for a young guy, who is designed by God to want sexual interaction. And there's a whole other topic here, but we have this delayed adolescence in our society now. I mean, you go back to every generation until the Industrial Revolution, and people were probably being married by mid-teens. And so the timing in the body was lining up pretty well for that because of where our culture is now with the advent of secondary education. We have teenagers that are living in this hormonal hurricane and trying to keep these things under wraps, and how do we deal with it? And we have to be honest that they're living through hell in a way if they're trying to honor the Lord with their body. But their body's ready, physically ready. And that age is actually getting younger and younger. Anyways, that's not what I was going to say. So, but when I think back to youth ministry, when we were students, Jeff and I were in the same youth group. We've talked about that. Amazing youth ministry. Absolutely loved our time there. And our youth pastor, Waller Boyer, he has made such a huge impact, I know, on my life and on Jeff's life and many others. But we did a True Love Waits one year, and the only memory I have from that is sitting in a room. All the guys were pulled out. We went to one room. There was an overhead projector or something, and these slides went up, and there was a nurse, a lady nurse, nonetheless. They're showing these slides of all these sexually transmitted diseases, and the conversation was. The takeaway for me was don't have sex or the girl might get pregnant or you could get a disease. And that was within the church. Now, I don't want to take anything away from our youth pastor. At that point, that just may be what was known to do, because it wasn't until I was a youth minister in my early 20s, probably about 20 years old, that I first had this thought of, oh, sex is good. Maybe I heard that in church, but really began to see his design for all of it is really good. And that wasn't until I was preparing to do a conversation on sex with the students I was working with then. And I came across a curriculum by Doug Fields called Good Sex. And it talked all about how God has created something beautiful. And it's amazing and it's good within his design. And so, I mean, I was that kid dealing with the hormones, thinking girls were awesome, trying to find any way to have that itch scratched in some way, whether it was just looking at something in a magazine or lingering on something on TV. But all the while fighting against it because, well, I know it's bad. It's bad. It wasn't so much I wanted to wait because it's good. I'll have to stay away from it because it's bad. So there's probably a lot of people who have that. If you're not raised in the church, especially in this culture, I would assume to say that sex is talked about like from the completely opposite end. Hey, it's good at any point with anybody, no matter how you feel, no matter what your gender is, what your inclination is, what your orientation is, all that. I'm just spitballing here, but I think maybe even kids today that are growing up in a churchless home what if they're just getting from social media their understanding and their friends, their understanding of sex and its role. It's they're saying it's good, not for the right reason, but it's probably completely opposite of what we heard within the church. So, and both sides are missing it. Both sides are missing it.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point because the church has sort of shied away from talking about the goodness of it, and the world has talked about the goodness of it, obviously through a perverse lens, because not only teenagers but a lot of us are in that, as you referred to it, Josh, that hormonal hurricane, which I think is a great term.
Yeah, I just made that up. Y'all can use it.
There's an attraction to sex and talking about it and thinking about it and discussing it. I mean, even when we mentioned that this was going to be talked about in our podcast, I mean, we had a few of you listeners who reached out to us and almost with joking excitement that, yeah, we're going to be talking about it. And I think that's natural. And why we've done a disservice as a church is we've, made it sort of seem shameful or at least hidden away from talking about it. When if you turn into the middle of your Bible, right past Proverbs and Psalms, there's a whole book dedicated to it. You read the Song of Solomon. I mean, it is about sex, the entire thing. And it's a book of the Bible. I mean, this is God's, revelation. This is God's truth that we're supposed to be reading. This is not a book that we're just supposed to skip and be like, wait until you read that later and you're married. No, like this is something we should read. And obviously there's more parts of the Bible that talk about sex, but if there's an entire book of the Bible dedicated to this, not that we should glorify sex, obviously, above the creator of it, but I think it's something that God obviously knew it was going to be important to us and wants us to get it right and to enjoy it the way that he designed it to be enjoyed. And so I think we do a disservice. I have done a disservice for many years in the church by just saying, stay away from it. And we'll talk about that later, kind of pushing it under the rug.
And there's an interesting dichotomy there because we don't glorify sex, but sex in a God honoring way glorifies God. Like it, in a loving way, with your spouse, who you've committed to, like even if it's not for the purpose of procreation, if it's just pleasure, even that honors the Lord as we enjoy what he has created. It blew my mind when I heard for the first time that God, and I mean, I guess I would have got that. I don't know. I forget how old I was, but when I heard that God designed the male and the female body with parts that serve no purpose but sexual pleasure. And you're thinking, okay, this was his idea, like to do this. And because some people will say, yeah, it's good, but really the whole purpose is to bring children into the world. And that is a huge part of it. And the very first chapter of the Bible, after man and woman are made, God brings them together and he says, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth with babies, basically image bearers of God. Like, so sex was given as a way to bring more humans into the world so that there are more images of God populating this planet. But he also made it fun and pleasurable. And he didn't have to do that. Like he did not have to put that in there. It could have just been one of those things that once you got married, you're like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Or only those who want kids, this is the way we get it. And when I started getting that, I was like, man, I feel like I was just withheld from, or withheld from me with some amazing truth that I don't know, honestly. I mean, I had my struggles as every teenage boy does, but I wonder if that would have protected me more in the decisions I made if I knew, hey, God, this is really going to be good. This is because God did this. He wants me to enjoy it in this way. Again, I was a scoundrel. I don't know if I would have submitted to that, but at least that's a motivating factor that is so much deeper than, well, I don't want to get an STD. You know, I don't
Well,
want
well,
to.
and the difficult part of all this too is that I think the church has gotten better. So this isn't about how
Yes,
bad the
yes.
church has done it. I think the church has gotten better and
Mhm.
is continuing to get
Mhm.
better. But the difficult part is that our culture has also increasingly had more and more access to it. So as the church has gotten better, our culture is talking about it more. It's more out there. I mean, it's everywhere. And I'm sure we'll talk about social media, but pornography in so many forms, not just naked people, is right smack dab in your face constantly. And so, if anything, while the church has gotten better, I think it's also it behooves us to go back and say, okay, how can we continue to get better, and how can we continue to stress God's truth on this and to help people who are struggling.
Yeah. Um, and this idea, just one last thing, because I believe you're right. Like the church has gotten better, and probably most Christians who are in the church, if the church is teaching on it, are learning God's design. Um, but I also think of Paul, and I forget. It just popped in my mind. I forget what letter it's in, but he makes this. He says this encouragement to young people who are burning with passion, like, or is it, yeah, like get married. If you can stay single, stay single. But if you're burning with passion, it's better to get married than to burn for your sins or something along those lines, right? So um, he even says, like, he doesn't say stop desiring sex. He doesn't say you need to give that to the Lord. You should turn that over. He's like, just get married. And that's always been one of my ways I counsel parents if I'm talking to them, you know, or they've got young kids that are thinking about marriage, or they found someone. I'm like, if you have found the person, you know, God wants you to marry, if you feel at peace about that and you can pay your own rent, get married, because it's better that you get married than burn with passion. Um, so it's a good thing. It's God's design. We don't want anybody to feel shame over having a sex drive, or having a desire for that. God has put that in humans for a reason. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that God's design has been, and Jeff, you're talking about it, has been perverted. And culture has so much access to everyone's eyes now through social media, things like that, that the culture's idea of what is good and right when it comes to sexuality is now being pushed into every device, every home, um, every bedroom, whatever. And we don't have to prove the point that culture has a perverted view of sex. I don't think we have to go too deep on that. But let me share a few stats with you. 1 in 5 smartphone search queries, I don't know how to pronounce that, is related to porn. Approximately 1 million people are watching online pornography every minute. Teens and young adults, the majority of teens and young adults say not recycling is more immoral than viewing porn. About 7.7 million Americans struggle with pornography addiction. I think it's probably way higher than that. Let's see, latest research suggests that about 5% of all. Man, is there a drag race going on out in front of your house, Ryan?
Always.
Ryan lives next to street racers, I think.
In 2013, there were 4.2 million porn sites. And last year, there were 8 million. And then I was trying to see, I found this. Okay, per month, there are certain porn websites. I'm not going to name them. But the most trafficked one has 2 billion people a month logging on. And that's just one. Another 2 billion to the second highest, and 1 billion to the third highest. I was trying to find, I saw a stat. I'm not going to get it correct because I can't find it now. But the porn industry every year makes more money than an NFL, NBA, MLB, and the NHL do combined. I mean, it's a huge moneymaker, which is why it's pushed, right? Which is why they need more and more people to keep it going because it's so profitable. So I've kind of jumped over this perversion thing, like kind of talking about, but that's the main, I think that's one of the main avenues. I think that's one of the main avenues
That sounds like a TIE fighter.
yeah.
Sorry.
It's tough to be focused when that happens. So anyway, so we have this monster out there called pornography, which is one of the main ways that God's design has been perverted. There are other ways. But there is, I've heard it, I mean, it's a pandemic. We talk about COVID and the pandemic it was, but pornography is a pandemic affecting everybody on earth in some way. What do you guys think about that? Like when you hear some of those stats, like to me, it just seems overwhelming. Like it seems, how in the world is anybody ever going to find freedom from something like this? How are we ever going to be protected from being tempted into something like this? I mean, is it as pervasive as those stats make it sound? Like, what do y'all think on that?
I think that the vice in any form is pervasive in our world. There's no shortage of finding things to feed addictions and, to, trick your brain into thinking it's happy. And the way I think the way to combat those things, because they're so prevalent and so readily available, even from a young age, is, properly educating about it, but two, also, we have to be real about it. We can't not talk about things and, act like things are only to be talked about in private and, not be honest about how, things are happening. I feel like that's the attitude that is taken a lot, is where, it's like, oh, well, we talk about this, but, it's like real quiet down here. We don't want to be too open about it. And, we don't just have frank, honest discussions enough when it comes to something like pornography, whereas when it comes to like drugs or something, we have no problem being just like frank and open about that. And I think that, that's the true way to combat anything that is not going to go away, is to talk about it and to be honest with people, not only kids, but, each other. We have to make sure that this is not something that we shy away from and only talk about when it's a problem. We have to, always understand the real things that are out there and how to approach them.
Yeah, you talked about, this being a pervasive problem. Obviously, I think it is. And we talked before this about how pornography is rewiring our brains, and it's causing all kinds of issues to how people see sex, view sex, erectile dysfunction. The list goes on. And I was actually reading an article out of Relevant magazine, which sometimes hit or miss for me with some of the stuff they put out, but this one was good. It was on really how porn is rewiring the brains of, not only this generation, but has been other generations as well. But it said over the last decade, the percentage of American men between the ages of 18 and 30 who reported not having sex in the previous year jumped from 10% to 28%, wow, which is like over 1 in 4.
Yeah.
And so it's a problem that has also evolved, from, just being people mishandling sex physically with somebody else to now it's just become sort of an individual sin, if you will, in that, the person is just allowing it to impact. Obviously it's impacting others, but primarily impact them. And I think it's something that we haven't talked enough about, but also haven't attacked the problem, because if porn is rewiring brains, then we've got to look at this from a spiritual issue as God needs to rewire our brains back. We need to allow God's Holy Spirit to really transform us and renovate our hearts and our minds. When David sinned against God, with Bathsheba, in that Psalm 51, he says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God." He's talking about a renovation of the heart, complete change, but it's God that has to do it. And I think so often our answer is, well, you need accountability partners, which I'm not knocking that. Accountability is good. Accountability software, things like that are good things. Those are good tools, but those aren't the final answer. Those are a part of the issue, because you can have all these blockers, so to speak, but that doesn't change the fact that you still want it. You still pursue it. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing here that the statistics are showing you that men are having sex less and less and less, but that doesn't mean the problem has gone away. It's actually gotten worse. Mm-hmm. It's because just putting some things in there to block it or not talk about it or shy away from it or push it away isn't fixing the problem. It's got to be God working in our lives and rewiring our brains, because if he doesn't, then yeah, we're up against a giant. I mean, a giant beyond giants in this industry.
Yeah, and I want to say something as well. Hopefully no one feels this way, but if you're listening to this and you're struggling with porn, you're not alone. I know none of us want to come across as saying like, "Hey, you guys got to get this together." Like, and you may feel like I'm the only one. No one knows I'm struggling. No one has it as bad as I do. Listen, everyone else listen to this. If the stats are true, 7 out of 10 guys are feeling the exact same way that are listening to this. So you're not alone. You're not unique. You're not different in that way. You have a struggle that a lot of men share. And listen, if you're female listening to this, there's only 13% of church-going women have said they don't ever look at porn. So 87% do. And the stat is something like 86% say they look at porn monthly. And that's of women. So 76% of men are actively searching for it. I don't know the difference between that and then just viewing it, but it's within the church, it's an issue. So you're not alone in that. And the reason, if you're in it and you really want to get out of it, and maybe you have tried the accountability, or maybe you've confessed to the Lord your sin 1,000 times, or maybe you've put the blockers on and you keep returning to that thing. It's very important to understand what Jeff was talking about the brain being rewired. That's not just figurative language. It's literal. The studies have been done that showed new neural pathways are formed through the viewing of pornography. And we talked about this before the podcast, that when you view porn, dopamine is released in your system, and dopamine is something that your body loves, your brain loves it. And porn is one of the quickest ways to have a dopamine release. It's a high. And so your brain learns, and it forms a literal pathway that, watching this gets me the quickest dopamine release. So you're literally fighting a spiritual battle. You're also fighting a physiological battle. There's been a physiological rewiring within your brain to where your brain craves that to get that hit. So it's a process of having the brain rewired. And there's so many things that you can do to help in that, to aid in that. But it's also why Paul wrote in Romans, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Like Paul knew what was going on. God knew we would need to literally hear that we need to have our brains rewired. And a big part of that is listening to Jesus and being in his word.
Mhm.
So that's a huge thing to understand there. So that needs to happen. And I know as Jeff kind of hit on this, like what are some ways to respond? Like if you're in it and you really want some freedom and a way out, listen, this is my story. I've struggled with this, with it for a long time. And I was that person that would pray over and over, God forgive me, God forgive me, God forgive me. This is the last time, I promise. And always struggling with it. And I came to a make or break point in my life. I was like, I just have to bring this into the light. And when I did, and there's a whole story here, but when I did is when I began to feel the bondage break and the shame dissipate. And James 5, read a few verses here, has become so real. The promise that's here, and you've probably heard this. James 5:13-16 says, is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Now, in that vein of bringing things to other people and being prayed over for healing, he then says, therefore, because of this, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. There's a reason that scripture teaches us to confess our sins to Jesus and to each other, that through the confession of our sin to Jesus, we have forgiveness of our sin and freedom is granted to us. But those things that hold us tight, the freedom, the healing comes through confession to each other. And it doesn't mean you have to get up on Sunday morning in front of your church and say, hey, I struggle with porn. What it does mean is find somebody who loves you, who's a believer. And it doesn't matter who, just communicate that out loud that you have a struggle. And once you communicate that, Satan doesn't want you to know that there's a lot of freedom that comes when you begin to verbalize what you're struggling with another brother. He wants you to think you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to be shamed, people are going to reject you. And there may be some people that reject you. But those who love Jesus, those who are his people, listen, when you share that with them, I promise you'll receive grace every time. Mm-hmm. Every time, because you're doing what Jesus has called you to do. He wants this for you more than you want it. And we have from God's heart, just share this with other people so you can be healed. And you share that with the people that love you, those who, care for you deeply, those who, love Jesus, and the shame and the bondage, the power of that sin begins to melt away. And that's where you begin to find the freedom. So you have to start there. And like Jeff said, I don't think it matters whatever else you do. If this isn't brought into the light so others can be praying for you and encouraging you, you're always going to struggle with it. And that is the absolute hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it may be the hardest thing you ever do in your life. But when I look back on it, man, it's been nothing but grace. Nothing but grace in that season. So I encourage that. I do want to just real quick, and the guys, I'll throw it back to you. I want to throw out a few resources or a few other things that in this process that would be good for you to do. And I'll tell you what, I'll put this in some of the notes below so people have it. We talked about realize you're not alone. Confess it. That's huge. That has to happen. Do find some sort of accountability, just some guys that would check in on you from time to time. How you doing? But I would strongly encourage finding some sort of professional counseling, especially if this has been a long-term issue, a Christian counselor that will approach this, because there is this rewiring, but there is something deeper that causes your porn addiction. I've heard it said that porn isn't the problem, right? We're talking a lot about it. There's all these sites, all this money. Porn isn't the problem. Your problem is in your heart. that there's something you misunderstand about who you are or how you're loved or how you're created. It could have come from your environment growing up as a kid, something that happened to you, something that you weren't told, whatever. Something has been developed in you that it hurts, and you try to soothe that in some way. And so you turn to things, hopefully it's Jesus, but a lot of times it's destructive things like porn, and that becomes the medication. So if you just stop taking medication, you're still going to be sick. You have to get to the root of it. So pastoral counseling, professional Christian counseling, extremely important. And then I encourage you, like if your addiction or your struggle has broken a relationship with anyone, you got to restore that. You have to talk to that person because you'll continue to carry the shame around. And that what do they think? And that could push you right back into the activity. So you want to restore those relationships. Listen, a couple of great resources out there. X3 used to be xxchurch.com. It's called x3.com. They have some amazing recovery resources. There's a thing called the Journey course. It's by a guy named Jay Stringer. He actually wrote a book called Unwanted, which will help you track where is that in your heart. And what is it that's the root? That's what the whole book is written about. You have an unwanted sin. You can't get rid of it. You got to figure out where it's coming from. And he walks you through that. Every Man's Battle is a great resource. And then things like Covenant Eyes, Accountable to You, and even Celebrate Recovery, especially if they have a group for people who struggle with sexual sins. So anything like you just have to immerse yourself in some of those things and take that big, hard step. And just let somebody know. Just let somebody in, and that's where your healing is going to begin. Sorry, I talked a long time on that, but I wanted to make sure all that got shared. What do y'all think? Anything you want to add into that?
I appreciate you sharing your testimony, Josh. I mean, very powerful, and I think everything you shared as far as resources and steps to take, practical steps, are very valuable. The only thing I would add to that is, and I think it's a part of that rewiring that may come out if you go to professional counseling, read God's word, pray. But we believe a lie, which is why I think this is a problem as well, is that this is going to give me the pleasure that I truly need and want. And that's why we go to something lesser than what God designed for us. That's why sexual sin happens, because we crave, we want, but we think we crave and we want something that we actually don't crave and want. And there's a scripture, 1 Peter 2:11, fleshly lust wages war against the soul. And so again, this is a spiritual battle. This is not one that you could just sort of, here's 7 steps and you're going to overcome this. This is a spiritual battle, and we talk a lot about that in all sorts of facets of the Christian walk in sin. We have to be armed spiritually. And as we talk about rewiring, I mean, again, that God is an enormous part of that rewiring, that transforming of the mind and the heart and the cleaning and the renovating. And part of that is going back to that thought of we believe a lie. If we can consciously understand that, then we know, okay, this is a problem. What's the lie? Where's the truth? And the truth is found in God. And when we begin to seek that truth, that's when God begins to come in and restore and do that rewiring. But it takes really a heart that's willing to really admit, okay, yeah, I am. I'm believing this.
So you talk about believing a lie. Let me share this part of my story, because my issue is that this is what I was able to figure out and trace all the way back to being a kid. That my issue, the big lie that I've believed throughout my life is that what matters most is what other people think of me. I was always the good kid. I felt the pressure to be the good kid in my home, and And then that just blossomed in so many ways of anytime I did anything wrong, I'd hide it. So everybody would say that my brother was the rebel. Well, I was rebellious. You just didn't know it. Like it stayed hidden because I didn't want people to know that I was messed up, right? I'm the preacher's kid or whatever. And then I'm the kid that's going to go into ministry and follow my dad's footsteps. And there's all this pressure from that. And so I never handled that well, even up until 3 or 4 years ago, just never handled it well. I would always think is if I had preached or if I'd done something in ministry or whatever, I didn't do enough for this person to like me. And so the way that I began to distract myself from that issue was pornography. But the truth to that lie is my value does not come from what other people think of me. My value comes from the God who created me and loves me unconditionally. And when that is the foundation of the way I walk through my day, like moment by it's a moment by moment decision I have to think through. My values from the Lord, my values from the Lord. It's not from this or that. I don't, if I believe that, as Jeff said, if I'm now believing truth, I don't have this hurt or this hole to fill because God has done it. And so all of it comes, I just want to reiterate what Jeff says. It all comes from a lie that we've been sold and that we're believing. And it just so happens that for so many people, the way we treat that lie is through something that is dangerously addictive, more so than cocaine, I've heard it said, majorly addictive and majorly destructive, not to your body, but as the passage says, to your soul. So don't take it lightly. We want you guys to know we love every one of you, whether we know you or not. You're listening. You're created by the same Lord that created us. We love you. We care for you. If you are struggling with any type of sexual sin and you don't feel like you have anybody to turn to, let us know. Like DM us, shoot us an email. It's dudefaxpodcast@gmail.com. Send us a message. Like we can be that first step for you of just being able to kind of get it out. Now, we can't be your accountability partner. We're not going to put that out there. We're way too goofy at times to be able to take that on for so many people. But we want to be people that you can share your struggle with if you just need to get it out there. Because we all understand in some way what it means to struggle with sin, whether it's porn or anything else. But we also know a Savior has shown us all amazing grace. And we've been shown it. We want to show it to others. Any final thoughts, guys, on this topic? All right. If anything comes up, cut me off. You good?
No, only
Jeff,
thing I could do is just echo the things you guys have said. I think there's a lot of great stuff that we've given out here. So, like you said, if anybody has anything and any just wants to talk or wants help with resources, trying to take those initial first steps to addressing this issue in your life, we're definitely here.
Yep. Jeff, it looked like you were thinking a minute ago. Are you anything to add?
No, I felt bad because I thought I cut Ryan off on that last part.
Oh.
And so I was waiting on him to say something.
No, I wasn't going to say anything different than what we've all been saying. So I think it's good.
And sorry for dominating. I mean, this is something, of course, that is fresh in me. And I have a burden for men who are struggling specifically. And I just want to be available to help any way that I can. We'll actually do some show notes. We'll put some of these resources on Spotify in the description and then in the YouTube description as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If this has been helpful for you, would you consider sharing it? Because everyone that either themselves or they know someone that this is a struggle and they need to hear truth. I believe we've given that and they need help. So consider doing that. And give us any comments or feedback that you have. We'd love to know if you're somebody who has walked through that and you're in freedom now. Let us know that. We'd love to celebrate that as well. We'll be back next week. Fresh episode, hitting another topic in the series of what does the Bible say about whatever. We got to figure out what we're going to talk about.
Hey, I would add, to what you said on people sharing, if you feel like this was helpful to hear perspective and you want more of this particular topic, not that I'm just dying for us to talk about sex again, but because there's so much more that we could say and there's so many aspects we could dive into, but if this is generally helpful to you, we look at the demographics on the Spotify per podcasters. 90% of our audience are males that are like 24 to 44. So you're in that typical demographic that, is very high on the list for struggling with this. So if this is something that most of our listeners, viewers say, we need more of this, let us know, because, we want this to be something that is helpful for you so we can continue the discussion.
Definitely. And whether it's this topic or anything else you have questions on, we'll jump into it. We'll research it and we'll try to do a podcast on it. So yeah, thanks again. Love y'all. And we're so glad you're part of the Dudefax family. We will talk to you next week.